Welcome to Change It Up Radio with Paula Shaw. As always, I'm excited that you joined us today because I have a very special guest that I'm really looking forward to introducing you to. Her work is very unique, and I think it brings a sort of customization to working with people with their nutrition, with their goals for weight loss, and bringing in the realities of what they've actually experienced in their lives. You know how I'm always talking about everything is energy, and everything we experience, we think, we do, we feel impacts our energy. It's all particles and waves of energy, right? So there's no way we aren't a wholeness, a package of all those things. And my guest, Gina Worful, takes all that into consideration when she is working with people in her practice called Mastering Mindfulness. Let me make sure I got that right. Yes, Mastering Mindfulness. So, in just a minute, we will be bringing her on. So, do not go away, especially if any of you have ever wondered, why do you always seem to have these cravings? Why can't you master the food intake or the kinds of food that you're eating so that you can attain your weight loss goals or your health and fitness goals? Well, Gina has got those answers for us, and we will be talking to her about that in just a minute. First, I just want to remind everybody that Change It Up Radio is a show about change, right? Because the one constant in life that we can always count on is change is going to come. If you like your life or whether you don't like your life, hang on because change is going to come. And on this show, our goal is to either spotlight change makers who are making the world a better place, or to bring you information to help you cope better, to deal more smoothly and productively with change. Because we all know sometimes that change is unwelcome, as it might be in a death or a breakup in a relationship or a negative health diagnosis. And sometimes change is actually self-imposed, like getting married or moving or getting a new job. But we humans have a tough time with the discomfort of change. So, what we try to do on this show is bring you people and information to help make that change smoother and more productive. And as most of you know, I am your host, Paula Shaw. I am a life transition coach. So, in my private practice, I am working with people to help them deal with the changes that have come in their life, welcome or unwelcome. I'm also the author of 3 books. My latest book is called Saying the Right Thing When You Don't Know What to Say. And I personally have to say, in all humility, that book is a little gem. Because you know how when you have a friend who's hurting, or somebody at the office gets fired or is going through a difficult time, so often we avoid having conversation with those people because we feel inadequate in terms of what to say to be helpful. Well, saying the right thing when you don't know what to say actually explains to you why you have that discomfort and then gives you actual sentences that are helpful to say and gives you the kinds of sentences that you want to avoid because they are not helpful. They will make people feel preached to or looked down on or somehow defective because of the pain that they're in. So that's saying the right thing when you don't know what to say. And before that one, the other book that I wrote for grieving people is Grief. When Will This Pain Ever End? And that book is really not a book you have to read from cover to cover, because what we know about grieving people is usually they've got a lot of brain fog going on. They're having difficulty focusing. And so what I love about that book is you can open it anywhere. You could even make a practice of just opening it randomly every day when you're grieving and seeing what comes up for you. But the chapters are short and it's filled with articles and information and tools and processes that you can do, because I really believe with grief, we have to feel it. We have to, it's the only way out is through. But we also have to be open to doing a little bit of work every day to help us move through it and not get stuck in it. And then my first book was Chakras, the Magnificent Seven, which is all about keeping those energy centers in the body balanced so they don't throw us off. Because when they aren't balanced, that's when you might experience something like cravings that you can't seem to control, behavior that's not helpful for you, feelings that you don't really want to perpetuate. So, balance of the energy system is critical. And Chakras, the Magnificent Seven, has a lot of tools to help you keep that system balanced. And again, I want to remind you, if you'd like to learn more about me or my work, you can get that information at paulashaw.com. Oh, and while you're there, be sure you grab my free gift, which is actually a kind of a cheat sheet taken from saying the right thing when you don't know what to say. And it's called 20 Things to Say and Not to Say to People in Pain. So that little cheat sheet you want to have in your glove box or your purse. So when those difficult conversations come up, you can do a quick review and you're good to go. And I've had so many people give me feedback that that little sheet was the perfect helper when a situation came up where they were going to have a conversation with someone who was really hurting. So that's paulashaw.com. And if you want to hear past shows, they are all archived on changeitupradio.com. And you can also get information there about being a guest or a sponsor on this show. So now I think without any further ado, I need to introduce this very special lady who is going to be joining me today. She, again, is another wonderful person that I met at the Bottle Rock Music Festival in May. And as you all may remember, this show, Change It Up Radio, was featured by Paula there at the Bottle Rock Film Music Festival. Well, maybe we'll do a film festival next. We'll put that one in too. So let me tell you a little bit more about Gina Worful, who I was blessed to meet while there. She is a registered dietitian and a master of human nutrition. After years of health struggles, she became passionate about teaching people how to know their body from the inside out. Remember, I was saying, we are this wholeness. If we don't combine body and mind, it's tough to make progress with either. And she trains people to overcome food cravings and create trust with their food and body. She also develops personalized nutrition programs using lab data to take the guesswork out of health and nutrition. She continues to teach her methods for conferences, international societies, academic institutions, and world-renowned health centers. So if you're not chomping at the bit to meet her now, I don't know what's wrong with you. Gina, please come out because I am very anxious to have a conversation with you.
Hi, Paula. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so delighted that you're here, Gina, because I think what you're doing is unique, important, and I think it's a real, what's the word I want? It's like a precision tool that's greatly needed out there. I have worked with a lot of people over the years myself who wanted to lose weight. And until we found out what was going on underneath the physical stuff, a lot of what was going on in the mind, the body just wouldn't respond.
Oh, yeah.
And my sense of what you do is that it's very holistic. So let's begin with, you mentioned in your bio that you had personal struggles that led you to this work. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I have always been interested in health and nutrition and was so eager for information. I grew up just like everybody else in the world where we're influenced by diet culture and what is the best way to be healthy. And so I was always just chomping at the bit, right? For what's the best, what's the truth out there. So I did all the things. I got the degrees and I really wanted to feel like I had the knowledge for myself to take care of myself and to really help other people. I was so passionate about nutrition. And so when I graduated as a dietitian, I opened up a private practice and I just couldn't wait to change the world, right? I was like, I'm going to help people, give them the best nutrition plans. It's based in science. They're going to know exactly what to do.
Right.
And so as people started coming in and I started giving them these nutrition plans, what I was finding is that they kept coming back week after week. Like, this is really hard. My habits are hard to break. This is tough, right?
Mm.
Like, I don't want to drink the soda and I'm going to set this goal. And we would set these really sound goals, nothing too crazy, nothing too restrictive. But
Hmm.
we'd maybe set between 1 to 3 goals. Okay, let's try to not drink the soda. Let's do something else. Let's build in some habits. And it was all based in sound science, but they always continued to struggle. And it felt like they were having this inner battle for their health and this inner war.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I was trying to do a very similar thing for myself. I knew how to create the best plan for myself and I was trying to stick to it. And I was able at that time to stay in good shape, but it felt like every day I was putting on my daily war paint. Like, okay, you're
Mm.
not going to eat these foods, right? I would wake up
Ah,
in the morning, build all this motivation. Okay, you're going to do it this time. You're going to, every day it was like dodging certain foods. It's like you're playing dodgeball, right?
right.
And by the end of the day, I would end up kind of losing it or feeling like I was losing the fight. And for a while, I was doing really good at holding on, but it was very intense. It took a lot of energy. I thought about
Mm.
food all day long was planning,
Ah,
thinking.
really?
And then
Mm.
as time went on, I don't know if it's my willpower started to weaken, but I really started to struggle. And sometimes I would start to lose it by that 3, 4, 5 p.m. time where that
Hmm.
vulnerability comes in. And I would lose trust with myself. And I would go to bed in this very intense shaming cycle. Like, you have all this
Mm.
knowledge, you know what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Why aren't you just doing
What's
it?
the matter with, right?
What's the matter? What's wrong with me? Why can't I just do it? You know that if you eat this, this is going to happen.
Hmm.
And so what I started to realize was I was struggling in a very similar way that all of my clients were struggling.
Hmm.
And I thought, this could not be the only way. There's no way I can have a career and my life and a relationship with food that in order to be healthy, it has to feel like a daily war. Like, can I do this
Yeah.
forever?
Yeah.
It wasn't working. And so I knew at that point, I have to figure out how to do something different.
Were you actually overweight, Gina, or did you just want to be more fit and better and you couldn't get there?
So when I was like younger and in college, I was very thin, but I was exercising anywhere from 1 to 2 to 3 hours a day. I was
Wow.
very rigid with my eating.
Mm.
And then as I got through college, and actually what happened was I started to go through a really difficult life transition. And at the time,
Mm.
my sister and I, we had a business together. We had a corporate wellness company together, and our relationship really suffered. And I was really having a hard time staying in the business. And so, because of my relationship with my sister was really struggling, I decided to leave our business, and that really rocked my world. It really
Mm.
I didn't have a business anymore. I lost all of my money that was invested in that business.
Hmm.
And I just had this major life shift. And I decided to break up with my long-term boyfriend and move out. And it was one of those big, massive life transitions. It was really hard.
Yeah.
And at that time is when I really realized that my relationship to food was so dependent on my internal state. And so for a while, I was so consumed with anxiety and depression that I felt very paralyzed and numb to my body. And I think going through those very big emotions, I was afraid to be in those emotions and with it. And I
Hmm.
think at that point, I kind of disconnected from my body and I just went up into my mind. And so I couldn't really feel the bad emotions, but I also couldn't feel the good ones. And I couldn't
Yeah.
feel my hunger and I couldn't understand my cravings. So for a long time, there was a lot of like just numbness in my body. And
Hmm.
during that time, I actually lost a lot of weight. But then as I started to uncap the feeling of emotions and shift my life again, it came with a wide range of very uncomfortable emotions. And I didn't understand my body, and I didn't understand my cravings, my emotions, my feelings, my anxiety, my worries. Because I didn't understand anything that was happening to my body, I
Yeah.
didn't trust it. And so that's when it really became the greatest war, out of not just holding it together for my health, but I really started to fight my own cravings and fight my body. And then I started gaining weight, and it felt like I couldn't stop, and I could see it happening, see it happening. And
Mhm.
I think slowly over time, I mean, to be honest, during this time, I really didn't even want to weigh myself, because I was like, I just don't even want to know. Right.
Yeah.
And now I think I'm probably about like anywhere from 17 to 20 pounds like back into my own like rested body weight. I'm lighter that, which feels like a very good natural rested weight without a lot of effort. But for a
Mhm.
long time, I felt so trapped where I saw myself gaining weight. I saw myself trying harder. I was trying to do keto. I was trying to, then just do all this different I was doing elimination diets. I also had a lot of inflammation and hormone imbalances going on. So it was this combination of trying to understand the science of what is happening to my body with my nervous
Mhm.
system and my hormones and my metabolism and my emotions, and how my cravings played a role. And it became this journey of just understanding and learning how to just love and understand and connect my body on a deeper level. So I know that was a long answer to your question of was I gaining weight, but I was in a very wrong direction that I felt like I didn't understand, and I felt like I couldn't get control over it. Like I was drowning until I really
Yeah.
took a different path.
But what hits me in listening to your answer is you sort of learned how to do the work you're doing today with your clients through your own life experience.
Yeah.
And
It's
what's a
it's such a
better
gift.
teacher?
It is truly such a gift. I remember going through it, and I know a lot of people can relate to that. If you're sitting there and you're like, why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
How could this be happening to me? And I
Yes.
remember thinking that, why is this happening to me? My dream is to be a great dietitian. Why would I be faced with this challenge? It doesn't make sense. And I was so angry and so much frustration. And now I see it. It is my greatest gift. And now
Mm-hmm.
I can hold that place of love and compassion and say, I
Mm.
know, I get it. I know it hurts. I know it's hard. And I know that you can do this, because
Yeah.
I had all the knowledge. I had a lot of knowledge, and more knowledge is not what I needed. And sometimes we do need to learn more. Sometimes we do need deeper understanding.
Mm-hmm.
But I can also tell you that if you have been on diet to diet, and you keep jumping from plan to plan, and you're just searching for that next thing, it
Mm-hmm.
might not be the next piece of knowledge or the next set of rules or the more restriction that you need. It might just be going into what you're afraid of the most, which is where your answers are in
Absolutely.
your body, right?
Well, in the world of energy psychology, which is where I come from, one of the things we know is that whatever you focus on, you feed energy to. And whatever you feed energy to grows. So most people are growing the very things they don't want to grow because they're focusing with their anxiety and their worry and their negative thinking, like, for
Mhm.
example, on gaining weight, when what they really want is to lose weight. And
Yeah.
that's a really tricky zone because what I hear you saying, Gina, is ultimately your program teaches people to love themselves enough that they want to do the right thing out of love and respect for their bodies. They're not coming from fear and scolding and hanging on by their fingernails.
Yep.
And that's not easy work. It's not easy to teach people to love themselves because we're all so good at judging and criticizing ourselves.
But once you do, it's the most rewarding. It's the most
Yes.
fulfilling. You realize that, and I did with myself, right? I was stuck in the shaming cycles of just like, you
Mm-hmm.
are this, you're that, you're never going to be enough. But then I had to ask myself, will I ever reach the most expansive, loving, fulfilled, healthiest version of myself by beating myself the whole way there? Right?
Excellent question.
You have to ask yourself, will I ever be my greatest, most expansive self by beating
Yes.
myself up there. And I love what you
Yeah.
said about looking for the where you're going. I think of it as like the kid riding the bike, and you're riding the bike and you're like, don't hit the tree, don't hit the tree, don't hit the tree. And you hit the
Hmm.
tree, right?
Right.
And so I like to think of the starting with the identity as one of the most important pieces to allow
Mm.
for change, because I think about it this way: most people are looking for evidence to figure out who they are and their identity. And the only evidence you have is what's happened in the past, right? So
Right.
maybe your whole life you've struggled with dieting, with sugar cravings, with you identify with, I don't have self-control, or
Yeah.
I'm the type of person who struggles. So you're like, okay, in the past, I've always identified with, I always struggle. I'm a struggling dieter. I use food to deal with my stress or my cravings. And our behavior will always follow what we believe is true about ourselves.
Hmm.
So if you believe you're the person who struggles with food, when those moments come up, you're going to align with that identity to be true, and you're going to struggle.
Totally. Totally. I think that is so right on. And Gina, I want to ask more and I want you to explain more about this sort of customized way you work with people, but we need to take a quick break. So let us just take that break and we will be right back. Welcome back to Change It Up Radio. I'm your host, Paula Shaw, and with me today is Gina Worful, who is a registered dietitian and a master of human nutrition. And we are talking about this very unique way she works with people, which acknowledges that we are whole beings and that you can't change the body unless you also work with the heart and the mind. So, Gina, you were just kind of getting into, and by the way, if you missed the beginning of this show, be sure you go back and listen to it because Gina explained to us her own experience and how her experience led her to the work that she has developed now in working not just with people who have losing weight goals, but you're also working with people who just want to develop a higher level of health and fitness, right, Gina?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So, how do you do it? Because I found that whole thing so fascinating how you use the lab work and all of these things you do to create that whole picture that I was just talking about.
Yeah, I think at the end of it, it's how do you get to know yourself deeper?
Mm-hmm.
Where sometimes we take an approach where we're trying to change the outside in,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't match, right? Whether we're
Right.
talking about your energy, or we're talking about the way that food is resonating with your body, or trying to force a certain, we're trying to force something outside in, and it
Mm-hmm.
creates this kind of battle with health. And I know a lot of people are stuck feeling that way.
Mm-hmm.
When you come from the inside out, it resonates through you, and your habits naturally change. And it's all about empowering yourself with knowing your body. So sometimes we do that in a few different ways. Labs are one way that you can really get to know yourself better. Labs were life changing for me because I didn't understand what is happening to my body. And I kept thinking, what is wrong with me? And I
Mm-hmm.
had all these hormone imbalances and slow thyroid and slow metabolism and
Ah.
all these key markers that were really slowing down my body. And so I didn't really understand what was happening. And I think it was the combination of actually like uncovering, looking under the hood and seeing like, what does my body need?
Mm-hmm.
Not that I heard this thing is good for somebody's health, but what does
Yes.
my body need? And then I started to understand my body and going inward by looking at, instead of squashing my cravings, right? That's what most people do.
Mm-hmm.
Cravings are bad. Appetite is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Let's squash them and follow someone else's plan. What would happen if I turned around and looked inward within myself and found beautiful appreciation for all aspects of what my body is doing? And I started
Mm-hmm.
to get to know it. And I started to see all these aspects of me as being like my greatest teacher. What if
Ah.
my cravings could be my teacher instead of my enemy? What
Mm.
if they could tell me? What if they could guide me and be my North Star on where am I hurting? Where am I unwilling to sit with the pain of my experience? So I have to go get food or seek pleasure.
Right.
Where does
Right.
my body telling me that I'm in a survival state, that I'm experiencing fear or worry? And
Mm.
instead of disapproving of that craving and saying you are bad, what if I allowed it to be my teacher and communicate to me what it is that I'm really always been needing? And then
Ah,
you start working with your body instead of against it. And it's incredible.
yes. I'm so excited about what you just said because I have actually done the work with people and used several energy tools. We use tapping, we use chakra clearing, we use a lot of different things. But what I found, like with one client, when her inner child was really feeling scared and wounded, she would crave sweets. When her inner adolescent was upset or ticked off or fearful, it was alcohol or it was salty things. And so it was that specific. And I found that so interesting. But I love what you're saying because I think that is so true. And rather than going, darn, damn it, there you go again. You're eating that thing you said you weren't going to do, to maybe just take that moment and go, okay, alcohol, salty, my inner adolescent's hurting. What does she need? And
Oh,
then
yeah.
do the dialogue with
Yeah.
that part of your being to see what's going on and love them through it. I say to my clients all the time, you would never walk by a crying child sitting on the curb and do nothing. But we walk, excuse me, we walk past our inner children all the time and do nothing. So I love what you're
Mm,
saying because
beautiful.
I hear it as pay attention to that inner part of yourself and see what's going on,
Oh,
see
yes.
what's needed rather than scolding yourself one more time, putting yourself down one more time.
Yeah. Yeah. We can think of it almost like these different parts of us, and most of them were created when we were, before the age of 7. And so
Mhm.
sometimes we might be thinking, why am I feeling the feeling of fear right now? This doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I'm safe. My environment is safe. I have enough food. Why is the feeling in me being, this is just an example, not everybody feels this, but is
Hmm.
one example. You might be feeling the fear of, oh my gosh, what if I don't have enough food? This scarcity feeling.
Right.
And maybe when you were a child, maybe you actually didn't have enough food in the home, or maybe your mom just said, no, it's not time to have any snacks right now.
Mhm.
And, it wasn't time to have those snacks. And then you felt this feeling of, oh no, what if I don't get food, because you were young and you didn't understand, you didn't know what
Yep.
time dinner was. So sometimes that gets embedded in our mind, and we're actually running off of those same safety mechanisms that we've had since
Hmm.
we were kids. And when we actually go and heal and soothe that part of us that we developed when we were 7 years old, it actually influences how we respond and relate to our food today, because we
Yes.
learned how to relate to our food. We learned when we were before the age of 7, typically, will I have
Hmm.
enough food? Will I be
Hmm.
safe? And food is one of our foundational core things that keep us safe, right? We have food, shelter, water.
Right.
So what that is, as soon as your nervous system gets triggered, that, oh no, I might not be safe, even if you are safe, but maybe it's stress, maybe it's
Hmm.
worry, you might have this inner drive to go actually seek food to create that solid safety.
Totally. And that
Mm-hmm.
subconscious mind is so huge and it plays such a big part. Just
Mm-hmm.
last week, I was working with a woman who grew up in a family with three brothers. Her older brother resented her from the day she arrived because she was second child.
Yeah.
So really gave her a hard time. The next one was she had a better relationship with, but then the baby of the family also just jumped on board that train like the older brother, and they were constantly putting her down, constantly making fun of her. And
Oh,
so at a certain point in her life, she was ill and had to be home every day. The minute everybody would leave, she would just start snacking. And
yeah.
that was at that age, young, she learned to soothe herself with food. So here she is now, a grown woman in her 40s, and intellectually knows what she's doing, but still can't stop engaging in the behavior. It's very
Mm-hmm.
difficult.
We have to
So,
go back to that origin,
yes, yes.
where
So,
that feeling was created.
and then do something about that, right? So really get into, and that's exactly what we ended up doing. And she realized that because she's always felt like she had to earn the right to be here and to get love, that if she wasn't doing for everybody and making herself indispensable, she'd be rejected and alone. So
Mhm.
it just goes so much deeper than, oh, I love sugar. Or, oh, I just can't stop crunchy salty. It's
Yep.
so much deeper than that.
It's so much more than just your ability to have willpower. So many people are shaming themselves that, God, I don't know why I don't have more willpower or more
Yeah.
discipline. And it has nothing to do with your level of willpower.
Mm-mm.
Because if you, what I just want to break down a little bit of science here too. So we've gone a little on the woo train. Like
Yeah.
we went to inner child, right? We
Uh,
went to inner child and energy. Can we just talk for a minute about the science of how we
yes.
get food cravings? Cool. So if you're like, okay, I don't know about this inner child thing yet, there is a scientific reason why we get food cravings
Mm,
that will make you have so much compassion for why you do what you do. So, in our brains, normally we have our prefrontal cortex working in the front of our brain, right?
right.
That's where we have our rational thinking. And that's when we're calm. And that's when you might be like, oh, yeah, I'm having a good day. I'm calm. I can eat the salad. I have good willpower, right? And
Right.
you're using your prefrontal cortex. Now, when your brain interprets that there's a stress, that activates a different area of the brain, the
Right.
amygdala. Yeah, that
Amygdala.
fight or flight brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're familiar with that. Now, when the amygdala senses that there's a stress or a threat to our survival, its core job is not for you to lose weight or to eat the salad, but to
That's
keep
right.
you alive.
Yes.
Right?
Survival.
Survival.
Mm-hmm.
So, that could be anything like a stress, like you are really emotionally stressed. It could be that you actually have a threat to your survival, but it could also just be that you're feeling loneliness or you're feeling overwhelmed
Yes.
or you're feeling anxiety or you're
Mm-hmm.
even feeling boredom. Boredom is a stress to our minds. That's
Mm.
Boredom is a lack of stimulation and good feelings. And so it can actually become a stress to our minds. So when that amygdala gets activated, those are your instincts, right? That's like when the tiger has to run. It is our true built-in instincts, and its sole job is to drive you to go seek food for survival.
Right.
So what do we want? We want sugar, we want carbs, we want sweets, we want
Mm-hmm.
things that are going to be quick energy so we could run for survival. And
Mm.
it's interesting how fast our body's physiology will shift. You might notice that when you have a food craving, your breathing gets shallow or your heart starts racing or you get
Wow.
warmer,
Interesting.
or food will actually even taste sweeter. Your taste buds change their shape and you will start to get into this very tunnel vision,
Mm.
animalistic like response. Like if
Wow.
you ever feel like 1 minute I had good willpower, I knew what I was not going to eat. And
Mm-hmm.
then all of a sudden it was like something took over my brain and
Yes.
controlled me and I got tunnel
Yes.
vision, right? I remember feeling that way. Like I know what I'm not supposed to eat, but all of a sudden I got this tunnel vision, like something was controlling me like a puppet. And that's because something is controlling you. It's your body's instincts, your
Wow.
brain's goal. It doesn't matter how much you really want to look good for that upcoming vacation or you don't want to eat the cookie. If you are in the survival state, it's going to drive you to eat and
Mm.
control you until the body gets the food, gets the information that your body is safe because you have food now, you're in a safe space. Then cravings come back down, prefrontal
Wow.
cortex turns back on, and then you
Mm.
just realize what you did and you're like, wait a minute, that didn't align with my goals. What am I doing? And then the shaming begins.
Yes. So,
So yeah,
yeah, what do you do when
what
you're
do you
in
do?
that state?
Well, I want to first tell you what most people do.
Mm-hmm.
Most people shame themselves and then
Yep.
give themselves more restriction.
Yes.
What does more restriction do? What happens if we take away more food?
More fear.
More fear,
The
more survival.
amygdala is now on a higher level.
Exactly, which is why when people go and they restrict more, they usually swing the other way and they binge even harder.
Yeah.
More loss of self-trust.
Wow.
When all along their body is doing everything it was intended to be built to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just hating our bodies at that point, right? So much frustration.
Oh boy.
So, what to not do is to put yourself into greater fear, especially because
Mm.
shame and guilt are actually emotions. The Heart Math Institute does research on how emotions impact our physical body.
Right.
And they show that feelings such as shame and guilt and fear will actually further drive up our stress hormone cortisol and put us further into that state.
Wow.
So when you have a moment that you're not proud of, that you didn't want to grab the food, when you feel things like shame and fear, it's further going to drive that stress
Mhm.
response. And then you restrict more, you're further going to put yourself into that lack of self-trust. So let's flip it the other way. Let's have a truce and come back to some love and compassion and
Mhm.
curiosity. Why
Mm.
did my body's stress response turn on? Let
Mhm.
me become my own research project and get curious. Okay, so I have this mechanism. What's going on here? What turned that mechanism on?
Yeah.
Now, when you pull yourself up above the shame and the guilt and that tunnel vision, you can kind of get this bigger overview picture. And you're like, oh, wait a minute. I see what's happening here. When I get
Mhm.
this trigger, this starts to happen and then I crave this food and then I go into this response.
Mhm.
Now you can take your control back. It puts you in the driver's seat because you have this awareness, you don't have this judgment. Once we stop judging ourselves, then we can actually be like, oh, and that was a big
Yeah.
part of my healing was once I stopped judging myself for not being
Mhm.
perfect, I was like, okay, let me see what's actually going on here. Let me see if I can figure out my body. And I started to predict my behaviors and I started to learn
Mhm.
how to calm and nurture my nervous system. Instead of going head to head at
Mm.
war with the food, I removed the focus away from the food and started connecting with my body and learning how to soothe and calm my nervous system or calm my inner child that was lashing out and crying or
Mhm.
whatever it was,
Mhm.
whether it was my nervous system or my crying inner child, and start soothing it. And what started to happen was once my body felt safe and I created safety in my body, the cravings started to like settle. I think of it as like sand
Wow.
settling at the bottom of the ocean. Everything
Mhm.
got quiet and the
Mm.
cravings subsided on their own instead of me going head to head with my own instincts.
I just think that is so fascinating.
Isn't
You
that
know,
cool?
there is a study that was done at Harvard doing an fMRI in real time. And what they did was so that's for our listeners, an MRI of the brain. And they had people think about something that was upsetting to them. And what they saw was the blood gets shunted from the frontal cortex back to the amygdala, and that amygdala fires up and, of course, is putting us in fight, flight, or freeze. But then in that particular study, they were tapping the meridian points on the side of the eye here on the bone. And they actually watched that send calming signals to the amygdala. And then as the amygdala calmed down, the frontal cortex can come back online. And so, to support what you're saying, how can you make good decisions about whether or not you should eat that thing when you're in survival mode and
Right.
this is turned off?
Amazing. I am so excited that you just said that because I've heard of tapping. I've had
Mm-hmm.
some of my clients go through tapping with other practitioners before, but I never actually heard that explanation.
Uh
So
huh.
I love when I can meet a practitioner who can understand science plus, plus
Oh,
some of the
yeah.
energy behind it too. Like that's amazing. I've never heard of that before. That's so cool.
Well, one of the things that I love about the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology, which I'm a founding member of, is that we are sort of hell bent. In the beginning, we were the woo woo kids. Everybody thought what we were doing was nuts because we were the original tappers. But
Mhm.
then we started getting the studies behind it and linking the science because a lot of people in our membership are psychologists and they wanted to know, why does this work? We knew it was working. We had all this anecdotal evidence, but we wanted to know why. And so studies like that Harvard study were so exciting because it helped us understand the mechanism that's going on. And it's like I heard you say, once you got curious and you were realizing what was happening in your body, then the cravings started to calm down. Because in that case, it was kind of like knowledge overcomes fear. And if you're in fear, the amygdala is running the show. But when you can bring this back on board, bring that frontal cortex back into the picture, now you have a shot at making a sound decision, an
Yeah,
intelligent decision. But if we're in
exactly.
fight, flight, or freeze, intelligence is not involved. If there's a tiger
Absolutely.
coming after you, you don't want to sit and think about what to do. You just want to haul ass and save your life. And that's basically the whole function of what we've been talking about, that part of the brain. So,
Yes.
what I love too about what you're saying and what you're doing with people, Gina, is you are bringing in the science and you are bringing in the mindfulness. You're helping people to understand themselves rather than just judge and
Mhm.
criticize and condemn themselves.
Exactly.
Because,
And that's
as
I love what you said about that, that it's not about you can make a better choice if you choose. And I think that that's the word. We're not chasing perfection, but when you
Mhm.
can come out of that judgment and explore and get that prefrontal cortex working, calm your nervous system, you can be in choice. So it's
Yes.
not about you chasing perfection and never eating the cookie and always having the best willpower, but that you feel empowered in your body. And when
Mhm.
you're just chasing meal plan to meal plan and somebody else's
Mm.
rules and you're slapping yourself on the wrist, can you ever feel like you are fully embodied in yourself, in your choices? You're not a
Right.
child, right? We don't want to
Right.
slap your wrist because you ate the cookie. Like,
Mhm.
but it's all about feeling that power and how amazing and alive we feel when we get to sit down and be in choice and say, I want to eat the cookie, or no, I want to choose the salad, or I want to choose indulging in every bite of the one or two cookies and not the 30 of them because I went into a fear response and didn't even taste it.
Right.
And then I felt sick.
Right.
And I think
Mm.
that's been the most experience fulfilling piece of fulfillment in my life is now that I get to have that for myself and I can sit there across from somebody and say, I know how bad your heart is craving to just have trust with yourself
Mhm.
and compassion and
Mhm.
love and work with your body and not against it. And it's going to be so rewarding to just go into what you're scared of, to see that
Mm.
there's so much freedom on the other side. It's truly the most rewarding experience to just get to trust myself and have a relationship with my body and not shame it every day. And that's where the
Yeah.
freedom is.
And I love that you bring in the lab work because, like you said, and I've heard nutritionists say this before, the brain will always win because the brain's job is
Right.
to help us survive, right?
Yeah.
And so if there's something physiologically going on, like hormone problems or something with our neuro transmitters or the nutrition or the supplement level or whatever it is, now we're trying with our minds to beat all this physiology that we don't even have awareness of. So you bring that piece in too, which I think is really important and powerful. And I think it arms people a little bit better to now go into this. I don't want to say battle because I don't want to put it in that context, but go into this um, desired shift, this goal of
Yeah.
experiencing their bodies differently. And
Mm-hmm.
so you arm them with all of the pieces that will help make that a success.
Yeah.
And that is fabulous. So I
Mm-hmm.
want to ask you if one of our listeners is really interested in working with you, Gina. How do they reach you? How do they find you? How do they learn more?
Oh yeah, if this is something that you are just starting to, this opened up your mind and you're like, whoa, I so resonated with this. This
Mm,
gave me new things to think about, new things to explore. I have a lot of free resources that you can explore. I have a podcast, the Mastering Mindfulness Institute, and a newsletter. It's a 321 nutrition newsletter. I do 3 science-based nutrition strategies, 2 meal ideas, and 1 massive mindset shift. And so
mm,
that's all on ginaworful.com. You can access all those free resources. I also have a upcoming Conquering Cravings workshop that comes around every once in a while. You keep an eye out for. And if you're like, no, you get me, you're my girl. you can always apply to work with me directly if you feel like it might be the right fit. But you can find me on ginaworful.com. And I'm also on Instagram, where I just share tons of free, valuable insights and strategies that can help you along your journey. So that's gina.worful.
And Worful is spelled
WORF is in Frank, UL. Gina,
perfect.
GINAWORFUL.
Beautiful.com, right?
Yep.
All right. Well, Gina, I can't thank you enough for the enlightenment that you have brought to me, and I know to all my listeners, because so much of what you said today made sense out of this puzzle of inability to lose weight that so many people struggle with. So I thank you. I want to mention to everybody that all that information Gina just gave will be in the show notes on changeitupradio.com. So if you're driving, don't worry, you didn't have to write it all down. We will have you covered. So thank you so much, Gina, for gracing us with your beautiful, brilliantly shiny presence. And thank you to all my listeners. And remember that you can hear us on every major podcast platform, including iHeartRadio and Podopolo, the latest and greatest podcast platform. And please remember to give us a review, subscribe, you know the drill, all that stuff, so that we can let you know when our next new episode is up. All right. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week on Change It Up Radio. Bye bye.